Yeah, Kandrla recommended for students to recite refuge and bodhicitta prayers for Lama Zopa Rinpoche's good health. So we'll be reciting that 3 times so we can particularly dedicate for the good health and long life of Lama Zopa Rinpoche and all other spiritual teachers. And while reciting the prayers, it's good if you can to imagine in front of you the Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha. You can imagine other Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and also lineage masters and spiritual teachers that you yourself have met. So you can imagine many figures if you wish, but you can also simply visualize one figure, Shakyamuni Buddha, and think that one figure embodies all the others. All the other objects of refuge are condensed into that one figure of the Buddha. So that's very helpful while reciting refuge and bodhicitta, to think of the Buddha and to imagine the Buddha there in front of us. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. May all sentient beings have happiness and its causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free of suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings be inseparable from the happiness that is free from suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment for friends and hatred for enemies. Reverently, I prostrate with my body, speech, and mind. I present clouds of every type of offering, actual and imagined. I declare all my negative actions accumulated since beginningless time, and rejoice in the merit of all holy and ordinary beings. Please remain until the end of cyclic existence, and turn the wheel of Dharma for living beings. I dedicate my own merits and those of all others to the great enlightenment. This ground, anointed with perfume, strewn with flowers, and adorned with Mount Meru, 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha field and offer it. May all living beings enjoy this pure land. Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niratayami. So now let's recite the mantra of the Buddha 7 times. While reciting it, imagine light flowing from the Buddha into yourself. And you can imagine it going to all other sentient beings. And our bodies and minds are filled with the light, and it purifies negative karma and afflictions, all the causes of suffering. And our body and mind are purified. And the light also nourishes our positive potential, our good qualities like love and compassion and wisdom, so they can grow ever more and eventually become enlightened qualities. Taya ta om mane mane maha manaye soha. 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 And let's do a little bit of meditation on bodhicitta. So in last week's class, we looked at that topic of bodhicitta, or generated mind, as it's called in the Ornament. And the Ornament itself doesn't explain the actual methods for developing bodhicitta. Those are found in the Lamrim. So I thought it would be helpful each class to do some meditation on bodhicitta to help develop that particular state of mind in ourselves. So one of the main methods for generating bodhicitta is known as equalizing and exchanging self and others. And that's the method contained in, for example, Shantideva's Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, the Bodhicharyavatara. And the first step in that particular method is to meditate on the equality of self and others, which basically means just contemplating how, just as we ourselves wish for happiness and good experiences, and we don't want any suffering, physical or mental, or any kind of bad experiences. So that's something we ourselves have in our mind. And the same is true for every other living being. So every sentient being is basically the same in wanting happiness and not wanting suffering. Though it's a fairly simple idea, but it's quite profound and effective to spend some time contemplating it. So start by getting in touch with your own attitude of wanting happiness, good experiences, and wanting to avoid unhappiness, pain, and bad experiences. So this attitude is there in our mind, and it motivates just about everything we do. All our actions, our choices, our decisions, everything we do from the time we wake up to the time we go to bed at night is in order to find happiness, good experiences, and avoid unhappiness, bad experiences. And it's not wrong to feel that way. So don't feel it's selfish or deluded. Buddhism says we deserve to be happy. We should be happy, and we shouldn't have to suffer. So accept, acknowledge that attitude in yourself. And now bring to mind someone you know and have a good relationship with, someone you care about, be a family member or friend. Imagine that person in front of you. And contemplate that this person is just like yourself. Inside their mind or heart, they have the same wish to be happy and to not suffer. Now bring to mind another person, this time someone you're not so close to. For example, a neighbor or someone at work or someone you just see in a supermarket. So imagine that person in front of you. And contemplate that this is another human being like myself. And in their mind, in their heart, they have the same wish that I do to be happy, to have good experiences, and to not suffer, to not have bad experiences. Now think of someone you have difficulty with. Better not to think of your worst enemy, someone who's caused you a lot of suffering, or someone you really hate. Just think of someone towards whom you have mild feelings of dislike, annoyance, irritation. And when you've thought of such a person, imagine them in front of you. And then contemplate that this person is another human being, just like yourself, and just like the last two people you thought of. In their mind and their heart, they have the wish to be happy. They're just trying to be happy and have good experiences and trying to avoid suffering, problems, and bad experiences. So even the things they do that you may find annoying are simply their attempt to find happiness and avoid suffering. Now open up your mind, your heart, and think of all living beings, all human beings and other kinds of beings, all beings that have a mind, thoughts and feelings. Contemplate that they are all basically just like me. In their mind, in their heart, there's the wish to be happy, to have good experiences, and to avoid any kind of suffering or problem or bad experience. So although it's a simple idea, it's very helpful as a basis for cultivating compassion and love and the other states of mind we need to develop for our mind to attain bodhicitta, the mind of enlightenment. Okay, so I've made some slides for tonight's class. So last week, we looked at the first of the 70 topics. We pretty much spent most of the class on that. And that was mind generation or generated mind, which is another way of talking about bodhicitta. And I also gave an explanation of true existence according to this school, the Yogacaras for Tantrika Madhyamika. And they also use an analogy to help understand how we see things as truly existing and how this is wrong, this is mistaken. So you may have heard this before, but it doesn't hurt to hear it again. It's kind of cute. So the analogy is that of a magic show. So it seems that in ancient India, there were magicians who had the ability to recite a certain mantra. And by reciting this mantra, it would kind of cast a spell over the eyes or the minds of the people in the audience. And under this spell, an ordinary object like a stick or a stone would appear as something else, like an elephant. And so, people would see an elephant and they would think this is a real elephant. So in this situation, there's three types of persons with three different types of experiences. The first type of person are the people in the audience whose eyes were affected by the mantra recited by the magician. And so they would see an elephant and believe that it's a real elephant. Apparently, it would look so real that they would even react emotionally. Like some people might get really scared because elephants are huge. Other people might get really excited and think, wow, what a beautiful elephant. Some people might even want to buy it or ride on it. So they would like react as if it was a real live elephant. And so, so that's the first type of person. And so when they see the elephant appears really out there, independent of their minds. And they believe in that. They grasp that appearance to be true. And then on the basis of that, have different thoughts and feelings, emotions. And so these people represent ordinary beings. So the term ordinary beings refers to those who haven't realized emptiness, those who are unaware of emptiness. So ordinary beings, probably ourselves, we see things as if they are truly existing, yeah, out there existing from their own side, independent of our minds. And we just buy into that appearance. We believe in it. We don't question it. So everything that appears to us, our self, I, our body, our mind, other people, other beings, and all the things in the world around us, all of these things appear truly existing. Yeah, so this is just like an automatic appearance that appears to our mind, and we just believe in it, grasp things to exist in that way. And then that becomes the basis for the different emotions that we experience, like something attractive appears and we believe it's truly existing and truly attractive, and then we get attached to it. Attachment, craving, grasping. Or something unpleasant appears, and again, it seems truly existing and truly unpleasant, and we react with dislike, aversion, even anger, hatred, and so on, and fear, jealousy, arrogance. So all of these afflictive emotions arise on the basis of seeing things as truly existing and believing in things existing in that way. The second type of person, well, the second person is the magician, him or herself. And the mantra affects their eyes as well. So they also see an elephant, but they know it's not a real elephant. They know it's just conjured up by the magic. So the elephant appears to them, but they don't believe in it. They don't buy into it. And so they don't react emotionally with fear or attachment or anything like that. Okay. And so the magician represents a person who has realized emptiness conceptually. Okay, so the first realization we have of emptiness is a conceptual one. It's called, the term is a valid inferential cognizer, but it's a conceptual mind rather than a direct perception. And so a conceptual mind, when it knows something or realizes something, it does so via a mental image. There's a mental image or a conceptual appearance, or the term is often translated as generic image. So there's this image of the object appearing. So when we have a conceptual realization of emptiness, we do realize emptiness, but it's via this medium of a mental image of emptiness. So it's not the best. It's a good realization, of course, something we have to achieve, but it's not the best. It's not a direct realization. And so a person who has realized emptiness in that way, conceptually, they still see things as truly existing. True existence still appears to them. And yet, because they realized emptiness, they know that this appearance of true existence is false. It appears, but they know things don't really exist in that way. So that's like the magician who sees the elephant, but knows it's not a real elephant. It's just an appearance. Then, number 3, a latecomer. So if somebody comes along later, after the magic show, after the magician has recited the mantra, and so this person's mind and eyes are not affected by the magic, not affected by the mantra. And so they come along and they don't even see an elephant. All they see is a stick and a bunch of people really excited. They probably think, what's going on here? What's all the fuss about? So they don't even see an elephant. And of course, they don't believe there is an elephant there. So this represents a person who has a direct realization of emptiness. So such a person is an Arya. No, that's the term of for someone who's realized emptiness directly. And when an Arya is in meditative equipoise, meaning they're in a meditative state in which their mind is directly perceiving emptiness, they're directly seeing emptiness. So at that point, in that state of mind, the only thing that appears to their mind is emptiness, the emptiness of inherent existence. Nothing else appears. So not even conventional phenomena like their own bodies and minds and other people and beings and so on. So all of those things just vanish. And so true existence doesn't appear. So there isn't even the appearance of things as truly existing. Okay, so that just totally vanishes from their mind. So that's like the latecomer who doesn't even see an elephant and of course doesn't believe in it. So an Arya doesn't have grasping at true existence because they've realized it's false and it doesn't even appear when they're in that meditative state. So this is the traditional analogy given in the text. And this is the preferred analogy of this particular school, Svatantrika Madhyamika. And it may be hard for us to relate to because nowadays, I don't know if there's magicians who can do this kind of magic, but perhaps we could use the analogy of television. So we all know that very well. And so, you know, when there's a TV screen and the TV is on and there's a movie playing, so there's all these images of people and animals and cars and all kinds of things happening. And a person, if somebody came from a very remote place, like, you know, the jungles of Borneo, and they never saw a television before, and they're seeing it for the very first time, and they're seeing these images, especially if it's a large screen TV, you know, and everybody's like life size, they'll probably think there's real people in that box and killing each other and so on. And so they probably have very strong emotional reactions. So that's like the first type of person. You know, they see these images of people and believe them to be real and grasp them to be real. Now, those of us who grew up with TV and have seen it zillions of times, we know that those images of people are not real. They appear, but they're not real. So we're like the second person. We do see the images on the TV screen, but we know, oh, it's just pixels, you know, and technology causing these images to appear, and they're not really people there inside that box. And so, you know, we can kind of ignore it and not get emotionally involved. And then somebody who comes along later after the TV's been turned off, there's not even any images on the screen. So that would be like the third person. They don't even see those images. And of course, they're not buying into them, believing them to be real. So that's like the Arya in meditative equipoise. Okay, so a bit later, we're going to talk a bit more about emptiness and true existence. So you can keep this in mind. It might help you understand better how that works, how this conception, wrong conception of true existence works. Okay, so tonight I'd like to move on to topic number 2, which is called Mahayana Instructions. So this is again chapter 1 of the Ornament, and in chapter 1, the main subject of chapter 1 is the exalted knower of all aspects, which is another way of saying omniscient mind, enlightened mind, Buddha's mind. And there are 10 topics that characterize that illustrate that help us understand omniscient mind. So we looked at the first one last week, which was generated mind or bodhicitta. So this is number 2, topic number 2 in chapter 1. It's called Mahayana Instructions. And so this follows after the first topic, because the first topic is all about how to generate this mind aspiring to become enlightened, to become Buddha, for the benefit of all sentient beings. So someone who has generated that mind, who has that aspiration, they need to know what they have to do to reach enlightenment. So that's what Mahayana Instructions is all about, all the information, the teachings they need to reach their goal. So the definition of this, which is from the text 70 Topics by Jetsun Chokyi Gelsen, is Mahayana speech that teaches a method for attaining the object of striving of the Mahayana generated mind. So just in simple terms, it's speech that is taught for Mahayana practitioners. Mahayana practitioners are those who want to follow the path, Bodhisattva path, and reach enlightenment or awakening. And the recipients of Mahayana instructions could be those who haven't yet entered a path, who, you know, like us, we haven't, I don't know about you, but I haven't entered a path yet. So still, you know, striving to reach the path of accumulation. From there all the way up to Buddhas. So even Buddhas can be recipients of Mahayana speech. But it's said that the main intended audience for Mahayana instructions are bodhisattvas who are on the great level of the path of accumulation and above. So remember, the path of accumulation is the first of the 5 paths, and it has 3 levels: small, middle, and great. So from the great level of the path of accumulation on up, bodhisattvas have attained a particular meditative stabilization, which is called the stream of Dharma. And this is actually a union of calm abiding and special insights, which is a high level of mental development. And anyone who's achieved this particular meditative stabilization, the stream of Dharma, is able to hear instructions from a supreme emanation body, a Nirmanakaya, supreme Nirmanakaya, no matter where they are. So they could be anywhere in the world, and they would be able to hear instructions from a supreme emanation body because of this particular meditative stabilization. So those are the main audience for Mahayana instructions, but anybody could be, we could also be recipients of Mahayana instructions. And then the boundaries where it's found, the boundaries are those who give Mahayana instructions, the ones who express or speak Mahayana instructions. And so the boundaries are from not having entered a path through Buddha ground. So again, that could include people like us, just ordinary beings who haven't even entered a path yet. So we can express Mahayana instructions. For example, an example is when we recite the Heart Sutra or any of the sutras. If we recite the Heart Sutra, then we are expressing Mahayana instructions. Okay. And then all the way up to Buddhas. Okay. So from us ordinary beings up through Buddhas, all such beings are able to give Mahayana instructions. So then there are 10 divisions. And we don't have time to go through all of these, but I'll just give a brief overview of them, and then I'll focus on a couple of them tonight just to give more information. And also with each of these 10 types of instructions, there's the message, the instruction that bodhisattvas need to learn these topics and practice them and meditate on them within the understanding that they are empty of true existence. So the first is the 2 truths, and I'm going to spend more time on that tonight. So that's conventional truths and ultimate truths. So we'll go into that in more detail. And the second one is the four truths of the Arya. So that's, as usual, true suffering or dukkha, true origins, true cessations, true paths. And it goes into the 16 aspects of the Four Noble Truths. So each of the four truths has 4 aspects, making a total of 16 aspects. So what they are, and also each of the aspects is a antidote kind of to a particular wrong view. So it goes into details with those. And then number three is the 3 jewels. So Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. So this text goes into the qualities of each of the 3 jewels, and it focuses particularly on what are called the uncommon 3 jewels. So the uncommon 3 jewels are Mahayana, how the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha are understood in the Mahayana tradition. And it also talks about causal refuge, resultant refuge, conventional refuge, ultimate refuge. And a lot of the material from the Ornament on this topic of the 3 jewels is found in the book Following the Buddha's Footsteps, which is volume 4 of the series Library of Wisdom and Compassion by His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Thupten Chodron. And then the next 3, 4, 5, and 6 are 3 types of joyous effort that counteract 3 types of laziness. Bodhisattvas shouldn't be lazy. They have a lot of work to do to get to enlightenment, so they need to have a lot of joyous effort and overcome laziness. So number 4 is called non-adherence, and that is a kind of joyous effort that does not adhere to or grasp at negative actions. And negative actions can include, like the 10 non-virtues, but also just being attached to this life and spending a lot of time and energy just making ourselves comfortable and having pleasure and enjoyments in this life. So for Bodhisattva striving for enlightenment, that would be considered not a wise use of time. So being attached to such activities is considered a kind of laziness. And so there's a joyous effort, which is the opposite of that, not being attached to or not adhering to negative actions. Number 5 is called tirelessness. And so this is a type of joyous effort that is opposite to the laziness of indolence, just like lying around, being lazy, and also procrastination, the tendency to put things off. I'll do it tomorrow, next year, next life. So again, a bodhisattva needs to overcome that tendency and really make good use of their time. And then number 6 is called thoroughly upholding the path. And this refers to the Mahayana path. So this is a kind of joyous effort that is the antidote to the laziness of discouragement, which could happen when you look at all the things that need to be done in order to reach enlightenment and the amount of time it takes. So it's possible to get discouraged and think, wow, that's too hard. I can't do that. So that's the laziness of discouragement, and that's an obstacle to following the path. So Bodhisattva needs to overcome that and develop this joyous effort of thoroughly upholding the path, having confidence that I can do this, I can follow this path. So those 3 kinds of laziness are explained elsewhere, for example, in the Lam Rim. And in the Lam Rim, the way of overcoming laziness is to meditate on the preciousness of our human life and impermanence and death and so on. But in the Ornament, the way of overcoming laziness is mainly by contemplating emptiness of true existence. So by understanding emptiness, For example, understanding that our body is empty of true existence, that will help us overcome the attachment to mundane or non-virtuous actions, like just spending our time looking after our body in this life, being comfortable in it, having pleasure and so on. So that will be overcome by understanding the emptiness of the body. And then understanding the emptiness of all phenomena will help overcome the other two types of laziness. Okay, then number 7 is the 5 eyes. So these are not physical eyes like the ones we have in our face, but they are mental states. They are abilities of the mind, and they're developed on the basis of having achieved an actual concentration or jhana, like at least the first jhana. So on the basis of that, one can attain these 5 eyes. And the benefit of having them is that one can engage in the practices of the path to enlightenment without having to depend on others. So one can know on one's own what needs to be done, what needs to be abandoned, and so on. So just briefly, the 5 eyes, these are mentioned in the Vajrakutta Sutra, if you're familiar with that. So the first one is called the flesh eye, and that is the ability to see subtle and coarse forms throughout the billion-fold world systems. Huge amount of space. So you can see all kinds of different forms, subtle and coarse, with the flesh eye. And the second is called the divine eye. The divine eye sees the death and rebirth of all sentient beings. So you can see them dying and taking rebirth, where they're reborn, and so on. And then the third is the wisdom eye. So the wisdom eye is actually the realization of emptiness, the direct realization of emptiness, of true existence of all phenomena. And then the Dharma eye realizes Arya beings of dull and sharp faculties. So you're able to see the mental states of various Aryas and know if they are either dull or sharp faculty. The 5th eye is Buddha eye. Only Buddha has that one, because that's omniscient mind, seeing all phenomena. So some ordinary beings can have some of the eyes, but the 5th one, the Buddha eye, is only a Buddha can have that one. So the instructions on the 5 eyes are that one should understand that although these 5 eyes have the ability to see their objects conventionally, they lack nature ultimately. They're empty of inherent existence. So this is something a bodhisattva is reminded of again and again and again and again. All things are empty of inherent existence. And then number 8 is the 6 clairvoyances, also known as super knowledges. And these are also special abilities of the mind that enable a bodhisattva to quickly complete the path and attain Buddhahood, and also help sentient beings on the way. I won't go through all 6 of them, but they include things like the ability to emanate. You can emanate different forms. And another one is seeing the minds of others, being able to read others' minds. Another one is remembering past lives. And there's also one of these that only a Buddha has. It's the exhaustion of all contamination. So when all faults and stains and obscurations have been eliminated, then that is one type of clairvoyance. And these also depend on an actual concentration. So you have to first obtain an actual concentration to attain these. Okay, so then number 9 is the path of seeing, and 10 is the path of meditation. And I thought if we have time, I'll also share some information about the path of seeing tonight, because that's very interesting. So the path of seeing is the antidote to the acquired obscurations, and the path of meditation is the antidote to the innate obscurations, enabling us to get rid of all the things in our mind that prevent us from attaining enlightenment. Okay, so let's look at number one, the two truths. So each of the Buddhist tenet systems has a different way of explaining the two truths. So here we'll look at the Svatantrika way, and there's two sub-schools of Svatantrika, but they're the same when it comes to the way they explain the two truths. So while a bodhisattva is practicing, working their way towards enlightenment, practicing the 6 perfections and so on, they are dealing with different phenomena, like their own body and their resources, their possessions, their mind, other beings, all the things in the world. So they're dealing with all of these things, and also the things that they're meditating on. And so it's very important for bodhisattvas to have a correct understanding of how these things exist. What is their nature, both conventionally and ultimately. And this is important to avoid falling into two extremes. So one extreme, sometimes it's called permanence or absolutism, or there's different terms, reification. There's quite a variety of different ways that's explained. And according to this school, that extreme is grasping at true existence. So whenever we're grasping at true existence, we have fallen into the extreme of permanence. And the other extreme is nihilism. I don't think there's any other term for that. It's pretty simple. And that is when you go to the other extreme and you deny the existence of things even conventionally. Yeah, like thinking things don't exist at all. And so while following the path, it's very important to avoid falling into either of these two extremes. So it's a bit like if you're walking on a bridge and there's no railings on the bridge and it's kind of narrow and there's a steep, drop on either side. You have to be extremely careful to walk on this bridge and avoid falling off on either side. So if a bodhisattva does fall into either of the two extremes, they're in trouble, and they won't be able to reach their goal of enlightenment. So it's very important for the bodhisattva to avoid that. And so the instructions regarding the two truths is the bodhisattva should practice without being separated from the two truths. So they always have to keep awareness of the two truths in their practice. And so what that means is they should understand first that phenomena exist conventionally. They do exist conventionally. And in that way, they can avoid the extreme of nihilism, which is, denying the existence of things. And of the two extremes, that's said to be the most dangerous, the most harmful, because if you fall into that extreme, then you may deny karma, cause and effect, and think, doesn't matter what I do, I can do anything and there won't be any results. And then you might end up creating negative karma, non-virtuous karma, that would send you to the lower realms. So you're going in the opposite direction to enlightenment. And apparently, you may think, oh, that's really silly. I wouldn't think that way. But apparently it can happen. Don't take it too lightly. When you do start to get some understanding of emptiness, then it is apparently quite easy to fall into that. And so we are warned again and again that we have to maintain understanding that things do exist conventionally. So emptiness doesn't mean non-existence, that things don't exist at all. So when we learn about emptiness and meditate on emptiness, we need to be firmly grounded in teachings, for example, on karma, cause and effect. Actions that we do lead to results. Good actions lead to happiness. Bad actions lead to unhappiness, suffering. So we need to have a very firm understanding of that so we don't lose touch with that. And then the second thing is, phenomena do exist conventionally, but they're empty of true or ultimate existence. And by understanding that, maintaining awareness of that, they avoid the other extreme of permanence or absolutism. So that isn't quite as dangerous as nihilism, but it is dangerous for a bodhisattva, because if a bodhisattva falls into that extreme, which means grasping at things as truly existing, they won't be able to attain enlightenment. That's an obstacle to attaining enlightenment, although they could attain nirvana, but that's not what bodhisattvas want to do, because attaining just your own nirvana, your own liberation, is an obstacle to helping sentient beings. You get absorbed in this blissful state of nirvana and you forget about sentient beings. So bodhisattvas, it is a danger for bodhisattvas in following the bodhisattva path. So bodhisattva needs to steer clear of these two extremes. And they do that by staying within the limits of the two truths. So the words in the text and the commentaries say not passing beyond the two truths. The bodhisattva needs to practice without passing beyond the two truths, meaning staying within, hanging on to the two truths to avoid the two extremes. Okay, so that's just general. And then we're going to go into details with the two truths according to this school. So the next slide gives the definitions of the two truths. So ultimate truth is emptiness of inherent existence. But the way it's defined is this, that which is realized in a manner of vanished dualistic appearances by a direct, valid cognizer that directly realizes it. So in simple words, what the definition means that when an ultimate truth is realized directly, like, the yogic direct perception, realizing emptiness. So to that mind, it's realized in such a way that all dualistic appearances vanish. So the next bullet point explains 3 types of dualistic appearances. So one is true existence. Okay, so the appearance of true existence is a type of dualistic appearance. It appears, things appear as if they exist that way, as if they have true existence, but that's a false mode of existence. It's not true. It's completely false, fabricated by the mind, like a hallucination. Okay, so the appearance of true existence vanishes when an ultimate truth is realized directly with direct perception. The second type of dualistic appearances are conventionalities, which just means conventional truths. Everything that isn't emptiness. Okay? Whatever exists that's not emptiness is a conventionality. So that includes our bodies and our minds and tables and chairs and cars and trees and horses and cats and dogs and everything. Everything that's not emptiness. So all conventionalities disappear, vanish, when emptiness is directly realized, when ultimate truth is directly realized. And then the third type of dualistic appearance is subject and object. Subject referring to mind, the mind that is realizing emptiness, and the object that it's realizing, emptiness. So normally when we have any kind of experience, there's always a sense of a subject over here, a mind over here, and an object over there. Even when we're in meditation, when we were meditating on the breath, or we're meditating on emptiness, or meditating on the Buddha, there's this sense of a subject and object. I'm over here, the subject, the object I'm meditating on is over there. So it said that when emptiness is realized directly, like when an Arya is in meditation, having this experience of directly realizing emptiness, that sense of a separate subject and object vanishes. And it said that it's like, it's as though the subject, the mind, just merges with emptiness. And that's all that appears is emptiness, not a separate subject over here looking at emptiness or experiencing emptiness, but just merging. And they use the analogy of water being poured into water. If you have a glass of water and you pour it into a pitcher of water, that glass of water and the water in the pitcher just completely merge. You can no longer distinguish them. They say it's like that. So those three types of dualistic appearances vanish when an ultimate truth is realized directly. There's a direct realization of emptiness. So that's how ultimate truth is defined. And then conventional truth is the opposite. It's what is realized in a manner of being with dualistic appearances by a direct, valid cognizer that directly realizes it. So when we have a direct perception, for example, a direct perception of a conventional truth, for example, a car, when we see a car with our visual consciousness, there are dualistic appearances that appear. There's the appearance of true existence. The car appears truly existing. It seems to exist from its own side, independently of our mind, having its own unique way of existing. So it appears truly existing. And it's a conventionality, it's a conventional truth, so that appears. And subject and object appears different. We have a sense of a subject and I or mind over here looking at that object over there. They seem to be completely separate, different, cut off. So all three types of dualistic appearances appear when we have a direct perception of a conventional truth. And even Aryas, when Aryas are not in meditative equipoise, so again, an Arya is somebody who's directly realized emptiness, but they're not always sitting in meditation realizing emptiness. They get up and walk around. So when they're out of meditation, walking around, looking at things, so they have these three kinds of dualistic appearance as well. Okay, so when they see the car appears truly existing, although they know it's not. Just like when we see images on a TV and they appear like real people, but we know they're not. So an Arya will still have the appearance of true existence, except for a Buddha. Leaving out Buddha right now, but just non-Buddha Aryas. They still have the appearance of true existence, and then conventionalities like cars and so on. And subject and object is different. They still have that experience of a subject over here looking at an object over there. So Buddhas now, when it comes to Buddhas, they don't have the first type of dualistic appearance. They no longer have the appearance of true existence. Things no longer appear truly existing to them, but they do have the appearance of conventionalities. They see cars and people and so on and so forth. And they also have the appearance of subject and object is different. When they're not in a not other, their minds other than the mind that directly realizes emptiness. So they're non-meditative equipoise minds, looking at people and cars and so forth. They do see conventionalities, and subject and object is different, but they don't have the appearance of true existence. So this point about dualistic appearances, sometimes it gets bad press. Sometimes people talk about dualistic appearances as if it's something really bad and really wrong, and we should just completely get rid of all dualistic appearances. But it's not bad. Even Buddha has them. Okay, but the first type of dualistic appearance, that's the bad one. That's the one we really want to get rid of. But the other two, conventionalities and subject and object, is different. They're not bad, not wrong. Especially when we are following the path and they're sentient beings that need help. They are conventionally existing phenomena. So we do have to be aware of them and know how to help them. So just in a simple way, with regard to the true truths, we can say that ultimate truths are emptinesses. Emptiness of true existence, of all phenomena, and everything else that exists that isn't emptiness is a conventional truth. That's a simple way of understanding what falls into those two categories. Okay, the next slide is looking at the etymologies of the two truths. So the term in Tibetan for ultimate truth is Dundam Denpa, and it literally means excellent object truth. That's the literal meaning of the term for ultimate truth. And so an emptiness, for example, the emptiness of a car or the emptiness of our eye, so any emptiness is an ultimate truth, an excellent object truth, because it is the object of an excellent, unmistaken mind. So the term excellent refers to a particular mind, and it's the mind of an Arya in meditative equipoise, directly realizing emptiness. So that's the most excellent, unmistaken mind that anybody could have. And what is the object of that mind? Is emptiness. Emptiness of true existence. And so that's why it's called an ultimate truth. It's an object of an excellent mind. And also it's a truth. So this word truth or true, the meaning of a truth is something that exists the way it appears. There's concordance between the way it exists and the way it appears, as opposed to something false or falsity, where there's discordance between the way it exists and the way it appears. I mean, just using ordinary examples, like fake flowers, some fake flowers are so well made that they look real, especially if you're not right up close to them. You see this flower and you think, is that a real flower? It may look like a real flower, but until you go right up and touch it, you don't know it's a fake flower. So it appears like a real flower, but it's not a real flower. It's not something that grew in the garden. It was made in a factory in China, probably with silk and whatever. Okay, so it appears one way, but it exists in another way. Another example would be fake money, counterfeit money, which can sometimes look so real. They have some test they use to determine if it's real money or fake money. So again, it looks like real money, but it wasn't made by the US Mint. It was made in somebody's basement by some counterfeiters. Okay, so just in our ordinary world, in our ordinary life, we have examples of things that are false or fake as opposed to true. Okay, so a true flower would be one that grows in the garden. and it looks like a real flower, and it is a real flower. So that's a true flower. So that's the meaning of true and false. And so in actual fact, only emptiness is true. The only thing that's really true, that's really a truth, is emptiness, because it's only emptiness that has concordance between how it exists and how it appears. It exists the way it appears. And that is in the perspective of an Arya's mind. So an Arya, who's in meditative equipoise, directly realizing emptiness, emptiness appears and it exists in the way that it appears. No discordance there. And then the conventional truth, let's use the example of a car. So the term for conventional truth in Tibetan is Kunzop Denpa, and it literally means all obscuring truth or all deceptive truth. Zop, the word zop has that sense of obscuring or deceptive. So some translators don't, instead of using the term conventional truth, will call it deceptive truth or all obscuring truth, or what is Venerable use? Veiled truth. Yeah, it's kind of more accurate according to the Tibetan. But anyway, conventional truth is sort of conventional. It's conventionally used. Okay, so a conventional truth is an all-obscuring truth. And the term obscuring or obscured refers to ignorance. The mind of ignorance, the mind that grasps true existence, believes in true existence. Okay. And so a conventional truth or an all-obscuring truth is something that's only true in the perspective of that mind, an obscured mind, ignorance, conception of true existence. So for example, a car is a conventional truth. It's not really true because it appears to be truly existing. When we see a car, we see a truly existing car. But in fact, there's no such thing as a truly existing car. So there's this discrepancy, this discordance between the way it appears and the way it exists. Although we can't realize that. Ordinary beings like ourselves can't realize that because our minds are so obscured by ignorance, that we're not able to recognize that a truly existing car is not real, is not correct. Only an empty of true existent car exists. Yeah, so a car, that's what's written there. Car is a conventional truth because it is true only in the perspective of an obscured mind, ignorance, the conception of true existence. So ignorance sees a truly existing car and thinks it's true. It really is true, really does exist the way it appears. But that's wrong. That mind is wrong. That mind is mistaken. It's obscured. And reality, a car is a falsity, not a truth, because it doesn't exist the way it appears. This is not easy to understand. We usually have to hear this again and again, but it is good to get familiar with it because the Prasangika school says the same thing. They explain the two truths. I mean, they have a somewhat different way of positing the two truths, but when it comes to explaining what is a conventional truth and what is an ultimate truth, then it's quite similar because they say only emptiness is really a truth and everything else other than emptiness is a falsity, not really true. But it's called true, called a conventional truth because it's true for ignorance, true for this obscured mind or obscuring mind. And ignorance is called all obscuring because it obscures sentient beings from seeing emptiness. It's like a veil over our minds that prevents us from seeing emptiness, which is the actual way that things exist. So again, the most important thing here to understand is ultimate truths are emptinesses, and everything else that's not an emptiness is a conventional truth. Any questions so far? I'm just kind of plowing along, but I don't want to leave people behind. Anyone have a question you want to ask?
Nothing in the chat here, Venerable.
Okay, I'll keep going. Yeah.
So even when Buddhas are in direct meditation, equipoise, and emptiness, they still have the appearance of conventional truths as well.
Well, there's this thing about Buddha's mind. I haven't checked into it recently, but what I remember is each moment of a Buddha's mind sees all ultimate truths and all conventional truths simultaneously. And so I think the way they explain it is one aspect of the Buddha's mind sees the ultimate truth with the vanishing of dualistic appearances. Another aspect of the Buddha's mind sees conventionalities with dualistic appearances. I think that's how they explain it. But I mean, to understand what that means. So that aspect of the Buddha's mind that sees ultimate truth doesn't have any dualistic appearances. But the aspect of the Buddha's mind that sees conventional truths does. I think that's how it goes, but I'll have to check that up. It's very mystifying. I mean, you have to be a Buddha to understand what that means, to know how that works. Okay, so the next slide is divisions of the two truths. So how do we divide them? Can we divide them? There's more question. So with regard to ultimate truths, which again are emptinesses, it said they can't be divided by way of entity because all ultimate truths are one entity. And it's important to understand we're using the term ultimate truths here in plural form because I think sometimes people get the idea that emptiness is just one thing, singular. Emptiness is kind of like this phenomena that pervades everything and it's just one thing. But that's not accurate. There are many emptinesses because emptiness is the true nature, the actual mode of existence of every single phenomena. So whatever exists has its own emptiness. So we can talk about the emptiness of my computer, the emptiness of your computer, the emptiness of the table, the emptiness of the book, the emptiness of the body, and so on and so forth. So everything that exists has emptiness as its real way of existing or ultimate way of existing. So we can talk about multiple emptinesses. In fact, probably countless emptinesses when you think of all the phenomena that there are. So even though there are multiple or countless emptinesses, all of the emptinesses are of the same nature or the same entity. And it's like they're all the same stuff, a simple way of saying it. And what that stuff is absence of true existence. So for example, if we take two different objects, like a table and a chair, those are two different objects. They are different. Each of them has emptiness. We can talk about the emptiness of true existence of the table and the emptiness of true existence of the chair. So there are two different emptinesses there. But the nature, the quality, the stuff of that emptiness is the same stuff, emptiness of inherent existence. I mean, what I find helpful is to think of a bag of sugar. You know, you open a bag of sugar and there's all these tiny little grains of sugar. So there's probably thousands or millions of little grains of sugar in that bag, each one has the same taste. Every single grain of sugar has the same taste of sweet. So it's kind of like that. I mean, that's a very gross example, but a bit like that. Like there's countless phenomena in the universe. Every single one of them has the same taste, the taste of emptiness. That's their ultimate nature, their actual way of existing, emptiness of inherent existence. And so it's said that when you realize emptiness directly, when you have a direct realization of emptiness, you realize emptiness on the basis of one object, for example, yourself. That's the recommended place to start. Realize the emptiness of your own self. And when you have the direct realization of emptiness of one object, you realize the emptiness of all phenomena. You don't have to go one by one, each and every single phenomenon, and realize its emptiness. Realizing the emptiness of one object, you realize the emptiness of all objects. Just like tasting one grain of sugar, you don't have to taste every single grain of sugar in the bag to know that they're sweet. You just taste one or two and you know it. They all have that same taste. So it's a bit like that. And so they say that from the point of view of entity or nature, the stuff that emptiness is made of, you can't divide it because all emptinesses are of one nature, one entity. However, you can divide emptiness by way of the bases. So the bases means the things that are empty, the things that have emptiness as their actual mode of existence. And so there are divisions of emptiness in the texts. For example, a list of 20 emptinesses and 18 emptinesses and 16 and 4 and 2. I'm not going to go into those, but if you are interested in Jeffrey Hopkins' book, Meditation on Emptiness, he has a list of the 18 emptinesses on page 204. That is just a list of them. But anyway, the idea is, I mean, we could also make our own lists of emptinesses. We could say the emptiness of all the people living in America, all Americans, and the emptiness of all Ukrainians, and the emptiness of all Spanish people, and so on. So we could divide emptiness in that way, yeah. But the nature of all of those emptinesses is the same: absence of inherent existence. I don't know if that makes sense to you, but I find it interesting. Then conventional truths. This is a little easier to divide. I mean, you know, again, we can, all the human beings in the planet, all the monkeys, all the turtles, all the cats and so on. So we can divide conventional truths in different ways, but this school makes a division of conventional truths into two groups. They call real conventional truths and unreal conventional truths. So real conventional truths are things that an ordinary being cannot realize to not exist as they appear. An example is a car. So this is a little tricky. So remember, conventional truths are not really truths. They're falsities because they exist one way. So they appear one way, they exist another way. So there's discordance between the way they exist and the way they appear. So all conventional truths are falsities. But among conventional truths, some are more false than others. Some are more unreal than others. I mean, it might be better to start with unreal conventional truths. So unreal conventional truths, the second one, are things that an ordinary being can realize to not exist as they appear. An example, a mirage. Okay, so a mirage does exist. It is a conventional truth. When we're in the desert or in an asphalt parking lot in the, baking hot sun, we see this appearance on the surface that looks like water, really looks like water. So that appearance does exist, but there's a falsity there. In reality, there's no water. It's completely dry, but because of the heat of the sun and the heat of the surface, this appearance happens that looks like water, and the shimmering, silvery, whitish appearance. It looks like water. So that's a real falsity. In fact, there's two false things there with a mirage. There's a more gross kind of falsity. It appears like water, even though there is no water. That's one kind of falsity. The other falsity is it appears truly existing, although it's not truly existing. There's two levels of falsity. And an ordinary person, any of us, can realize the first type of falsity, the gross one. We can realize it looks like water, but it's not really water. You just walk up and touch it. You don't feel any water there. So we can understand that coarser, grosser level of falsity. But the subtler one, appearing as truly existing, although not truly existing, that we can understand. Ordinary beings cannot understand that. So that's an unreal conventional truth. So other examples would be like images on a TV screen or dreams, the things that appear in our dreams while we're asleep and dreaming. These things appear, and during that time we believe in them. We believe they're real and we get emotionally involved. But when we wake up and they vanish, we realize, oh, they were not real. That was a dream. So that's another example of something we can realize to be false. And what are some other examples? Reflections in a mirror. So when you see something reflected in a mirror, and if you don't realize there's a mirror there, then you might believe that that's a real person. I've had that experience before, especially if you walk into a room and the whole wall is covered with mirrors and you don't realize it's mirrors. You see another person there and you think, oh, I didn't realize I had a twin. So for a moment, you're fooled, thinking that's a real person there. But then quickly you realize, no, it's just a mirror. So there's lots of examples like that. An echo is another one. If you're in a big empty building or in a cave or something and you speak or yell, and then this other voice comes, you might for a moment think there's another person yelling back at you. And then you realize, oh no, it's just an echo, my own voice echoing. So there's lots of examples of that. So these are unreal conventional truths because we can realize the falseness, the false aspect of it, that they don't exist as they appear. Now back to the real conventional truths. So real conventional truths don't have that gross level of falsity, and only the subtle one, appearing as truly existing. And we ordinary beings can't recognize that. We can't recognize that they don't exist like that. So car, bicycle, table, chair, tree, mountain. So these ordinary things, people, animals, there is a falseness there, appearing truly existing, although they don't exist truly. But we ordinary people aren't able to realize that. But there are also things that we can talk about and think about and write about that don't even exist conventionally. So examples given in the text are like rabbit horns or flowers growing in the sky, turtle hair. Turtles don't have hair. So hair of a turtle is another example of something that doesn't exist. So these are things that don't even exist conventionally. They are non-existence. Harry Potter, I like that example. You know, how many books about Harry Potter and movies about Harry Potter and t-shirts and all this paraphernalia about Harry Potter? Harry Potter doesn't exist. Yeah, it's just a fictitious character. So there's lots of examples of things that don't even exist, although we can think about them and talk about them, but they don't even exist. So those are not even conventional truths. So to be a conventional truth, even an unreal conventional truth, it has to exist. So non-existence, like rabbit horns and Harry Potter, aren't even in this list. They're not even conventional truths or ultimate truths. So it's only Svatantrika Madhyamika that makes this division into real and unreal conventional truths. And the Prasangikas don't accept this because they say all conventional truths are false. You can't call them real. It's like crazy to say there's real conventional truths because all conventional truths are false. And they say, you know, a single thing cannot be both real and false. That's not reasonable. So this is a point of contention between the two Madhyamika schools. This way of dividing is just Svatantrika. Okay, so then there's one more thing about the two truths. And that's the investigation of one and different. So this is in the Ornament and its commentaries. So this is looking at the relationship between the two truths. What kind of relationship do they have? Specifically, a conventional truth and its emptiness. Okay, what is the relationship between a conventional truth and its emptiness of true existence? So the answer is the two truths, for example, a car and its emptiness are one entity, but not one. So just to explain those terms, one entity, the term one entity or one nature, this comes up a lot in Buddhist philosophy, so it's good to learn what it means. One entity or one nature refers to two things that arise and abide and cease together. They come into existence, abide, and go out of existence together. So if two things are like that, then they are one nature or one entity. So an example would be a table and its parts. So there's a table, and then there's all the parts of the table, the legs, the top, the nails, and so forth. So the table and the parts of the table come into existence at the same time, abide together, and go out of existence at the same time. And you can't see them separately. They don't appear separately. You can't see the table in one place and the parts of the table in another place. So they're kind of stuck together. Another example would be a piece of cloth and its color. So like this piece of cloth, a maroon piece of cloth, and the color of the cloth. The cloth and the color of the cloth are actually two different things, but they are one entity because we can't separate them. They come into existence together, abide together, they cease together. So they are one nature, one entity. So that is the case with the two truths. A car, like any conventional truth, like a car, and its emptiness, they are one nature, one entity. They arise together, abide together, and cease together. So when the car is made in the factory, the emptiness of the car comes into existence as well. And if the car is destroyed, burned or smashed or whatever, no longer a car, the emptiness of the car also goes out of existence. So as long as the car is there, the emptiness of the car is there. But when the car is no longer there, the emptiness will no longer be there as well. So they are one nature, one entity, but they're not one. So one is another term that's used in the philosophical teachings. And for two things to be one, they have to be exactly the same in both name and meaning. So they have to have the same name and they have to be the same thing. So the only example of two things that are one would be car and car, car and car, or table and table, or cat and cat. So they have the same name and they are the same thing. They're talking about the same thing. Whereas if we say cat and dog, those are not one. Or even if we say for example, car and auto, car and automobile. Now, automobile is another name for car, but it's a different name. So car and auto are not one because they have different names, although they mean the same thing. Anyway, that's, yeah. So the two truths are one entity, but they're not one. They have different names, a conventional truth and ultimate truth. So they have different names, and they also have different meanings. They're different phenomena. A conventional truth is not an emptiness, and an emptiness is not a conventional truth, but they are one entity or one nature. And in the Sutra Unraveling the Thought, one of the Mahayana sutras, it mentions some faults that would occur if the two truths were one. So one of the faults is mentioned here. If they were one, we could realize emptiness just by looking at the car. To realize emptiness, all we have to do is look at a conventional truth, and we would immediately see the emptiness of it, because the emptiness is one with that object, with that conventional truth. So that would be really easy to realize emptiness. We don't have to study and meditate. All we have to do is look at a conventional truth, and we would see emptiness. So then all sentient beings could very quickly get out of samsara, overcome their afflictions. So that's absurd. Okay, so emptiness and the two truths and conventional truth and its emptiness are not one, but they are one nature, one entity. And then the second bullet point is looking at the idea of difference, because of these terms different and different entities. So the two truths, for example, a car and its emptiness, are different, and they're different because they're not one. Okay, so different just means anything that's not one. Any two things that are not one are different, because one and different are actually a dichotomy, meaning that whatever exists has to be one or the other. Whatever exists is either one or it's different. This comes up in the reasoning to understand emptiness. There's one reasoning related to this. So it's good to be familiar with these terms. So since the two truths, a car and its emptiness, are not one, then they're different. So they are different. But then there's this other expression, different entities. So they are not different entities. So the meaning of different entities is two things that can exist separately, like cat and dog. Okay, a cat and a dog are two different things, and we can see them separately. They don't arise together, abide together, cease together. Okay, so any two things that are not one entity are different entities. That's the meaning of different entities. So examples, dog and a cat, a table and a chair, Joe Biden and Donald Trump, okay? Or any two things that are not one entity are different entities. But does this apply to the two truths? Does this apply to a car and its emptiness? Are the car and the emptiness of the car different entities? They are not. And again, the Sutra Unraveling the Thought gives a fault of this. It's a little harder to understand. But the last sentence says, if they were different entities, the emptiness of true existence of the car would not be the reality, dharmata, term in Sanskrit. In other words, the final mode of existence of the car. So the way I understand that, I hope I understand it correctly, but the way I understand it was that if we wanted to understand the emptiness of the car, if we wanted to investigate, how does the car exist? Is it truly existing or is it empty of true existence? So we go through a process of investigating. It appears truly existing, but is it really like that? And if we do this correctly, we will realize emptiness of true existence of the car. We'll realize the car is empty of true existence. But even if we realize the emptiness of true existence of the car, that would not be the reality or the final mode of existence of the car. The final mode of existence would be something else we haven't yet discovered, we haven't yet realized. I'm not quite sure how that works. But yeah, I'll just read what it says in the Sutra Unraveling the Thought. Maybe you can make more sense of it. It says, also, if the natures of conditioned things and the nature of the ultimate were different, then the nature of the ultimate would not be the general nature of all conditioned natures. Yeah, I also am not completely sure what it means, but yeah, what I think it means is that if they were different natures, or different entities rather, the car and its emptiness of inherent existence, if those were two different entities, and even if you realize the emptiness of the car, you would not realize the final mode of existence, the ultimate mode of existence, the reality of the car. You just have to search somewhere else for that. That's the meaning, but maybe you need to think about it. You need to think about that one. So the conclusion then is that the relationship between the two truths is that they are one entity, one nature. That those terms have the same meaning, one entity, one nature, but they are not one. They're not one and the same thing. They're one entity, meaning they can't be separated. They come into existence and go out of existence together. Can't be separated. But they're still different. They're two different things. If they weren't two different things, then as soon as we see a car, we would see the emptiness of the car. Okay, so they are two different things. Just by seeing the car doesn't mean you see the emptiness of the car. So even though they're one entity, can't be separated, but they are two different things. But they're not different entities, they're one entity. So this is difficult. It usually takes a while. I know it took me ages to get my mind around these terms, but it is useful because when we learn about emptiness and meditate on emptiness, this kind of terminology does come up. And but it's also helpful to understand that emptiness isn't something out in space. Sometimes we get that idea that, it's floating around up in space somewhere. Emptiness is right here. Yeah, it's the true nature of everything. Our bodies, every part of our body, everything we look at and touch and deal with, the food that we eat, the books that we read, the computers that we play on. So emptiness is right here, where phenomena are. Okay, so to know emptiness, to realize emptiness, we have to deal with conventional things like our bodies and our minds and tables and chairs and realize that they're actual way of existing, their real way of existing is empty of true existence, this false mode of existence that our mind kind of superimposes on top of them. So I think that's important to understand, because people do sometimes get this idea that emptiness is far away, somewhere else, not right here. So I think this idea that conventional truth and ultimate truth are one entity. They're right there together, right in front of our eyes. We just can't see the emptiness. Not yet, but we will one day. Well, I was going to go on and talk about the path of seeing, but I wanted to do some meditation. I thought it would be helpful to do a little bit of meditation on the two truths so that we can get a hopefully better understanding of what they are, because it is such an important topic. So make yourselves comfortable. And you might be feeling tired or sleepy. So it's helpful to sit up straight. Try to keep your back straight and maybe don't close your eyes all the way. Otherwise, that could be an invitation to go to sleep. So keep your eyes open a little bit, just looking down onto the table or whatever is in front of you. And let's use our own body as an example. We have our body with us 24 hours a day. So just become aware of your body sitting there. So this body is a conventional truth. And when we look at our body or feel our body with our body awareness, or experience it in any way with any of our sense perceptions, it appears dualistically. The main kind of dualistic appearance is that of true existence. So whenever we see our body, feel our body, think of our body, what appears is truly existing body. Body that's existing all on its own, having its own way of existing, independent of the mind. We're so used to that way of appearing that for us it's just normal. We've never experienced things in any other way. So we just think, well, that's how it is. It appears that way and it exists that way. Just like the audience in the magic show seeing the elephant, and it looks so real, and they completely believe it's a real elephant. In a similar way, our body appears truly existing, and it seems so true, we don't doubt it, deny it, we just buy into it, believe it. And as a result of seeing our body as truly existing and believing that it exists truly, we have all kinds of thoughts, preconceptions, superimpositions, and emotions about our body, sometimes attachment or aversion or pride, arrogance, conceit, or fear. For example, when our body doesn't feel well or we notice signs of aging, we get emotionally caught up on the basis of seeing our body as truly existing. Now let's imagine that we are a yogi who learns about emptiness, studies it, and then meditates on it using various reasons to check if the body does exist the way it appears, if it does exist truly or not. And eventually they realize that this appearance of true existence is false. The body doesn't exist in that way. So they gain an inferential valid cognizer. This is a conceptual realization of emptiness, of the emptiness of true existence of the body. So perhaps we could compare it to our understanding that the figures appearing on a TV screen or a movie screen are not real people, even though they appear to be real, but we know they're not. It's just an appearance due to various factors, technology. We don't buy into that appearance as real. So initially, the yogi still has the appearance of true existence. The body still appears truly existing, but they know it doesn't exist that way. That's a false appearance. And they continue meditating on this understanding, this realization. It gets deeper and stronger. And eventually they gain a direct, non-conceptual realization of emptiness of the body. And at that time, when they're in that mental state, the appearance of truly existing body completely vanishes. There's no longer even the appearance of true existence of the body. And even the conventionally existing body disappears when they're in that meditative state. There's no appearance at all of the body or of any other conventional phenomena. Everything else vanishes, and the only thing that appears is emptiness, emptiness of inherent existence, which is said to be like space. And also what happens is the mind merges with the object emptiness. So there's no longer a sense of subject and object, subject over here, looking at emptiness over there. So even that sense of a separate subject vanishes. Only emptiness appears. And when the yogi arises from this meditative state, opens their eyes, looks around, walks around, then again things appear. Their body appears and other phenomena appear. Conventional phenomena, conventional things appear again. And they do appear truly existing. So the appearance of true existence is there again, but this time they don't believe in it. They know it's a false appearance. Like the appearance of a mirage as water. You've already established that there's no water there, then you're not fooled by the appearance. It appears, but you know it's not real, it's not true. So that's how the yogi is with the appearance of true existence. You know it's a false appearance. Things don't exist that way. And as a result of this, the yogi is no longer caught up in emotions, feeling attachment, desire for attractive things, aversion, dislike for unattractive things, fear for scary things. They know that things, although they appear truly existing, don't really exist that way. So that's ultimate truth, emptiness of inherent existence. So at this point in time, we probably only have a conceptual understanding of it, a intellectual understanding. But if we continue to study and meditate, then one day we too will be able to see it directly, have a direct realization of it. Anyone have a question?
Um, when we say that last week, when we were talking about engaging and wishing bodhicitta, and that bodhisattvas have both types, particularly in the context of going to meditative equipoise. But I was wondering how a bodhisattva outside of meditative equipoise, when they're just doing daily activities, wouldn't everything that they're doing be engaging bodhicitta, like even just drinking a cup of tea or going to sleep? Or what's another example of wishing bodhicitta in the mind of a bodhisattva that's not that non-manifest mind in meditative equipoise?
What's another example of wishing bodhicitta in the mind of a bodhisattva other than when they're in meditative equipoise? I think my understanding, if I remember correctly, is that it's only in the beginning that a bodhisattva would have wishing bodhicitta. Like when they first generate bodhicitta, it's wishing bodhicitta. But as soon as they start practicing bodhisattva deeds, then it's always engaging bodhicitta. So I think, like you said, making a cup of tea. So I think when a bodhisattva is making a cup of tea, they would transform that into a bodhisattva deed. That's my understanding. And so they would be constantly, when they're not in meditative equipoise, when they're out of meditative equipoise, they would be constantly engaged in bodhisattva deeds. And so their bodhicitta would be engaging bodhicitta. But then when they go into meditation and they're meditating on emptiness in meditative equipoise, they can no longer have engaging bodhicitta. So it transforms into wishing bodhicitta and is a non-manifest aspect in their mind. I think that's my understanding of it.
Only like the first few moments or period of
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
bodhicitta.
Yeah, I don't know how long it would be from the time they first generate wishing bodhicitta to when they have engaging bodhicitta. That's probably not definite. Depends on individual persons. But I mean, I think that the point our teacher was making was that a bodhisattva is never without bodhicitta. There's always bodhicitta in their mind, either engaging or wishing. But it's always there in some form.
But isn't there a point, I mean, in the path of preparation somewhere, I can't remember where, that before it's definite that you couldn't use it, right?
No, it's the path of accumulation.
Oh, it is.
Yeah,
Has
so
accumulation.
yeah, the path of accumulation has 3 levels,
Yeah.
small, middle, and great.
Yeah.
So when you have bodhicitta, uncontrived, spontaneous bodhicitta, you attain the small level of the path of accumulation, the very first step in the path of accumulation. And when you're on that small level, it's still possible to lose bodhicitta. But when you get to the second level, the middle stage of the path of accumulation, you say you can no longer lose bodhicitta. But how long you're on these levels, I don't know. I mean, they do say, they talk about 3 countless great eons to attain enlightenment. And so our teacher said, the first countless great eon is the first 2 paths, path of accumulation and path of preparation. So you could be spending a long time on those 2 paths and each level. Yeah, it could take you quite a while, but that would depend on individuals and how quickly they're able to proceed to the next level. But yeah, you could be on that small level for quite a while and still having kind of fragile, vulnerable bodhicitta that could be lost.
Yeah, so you could fall possibly, fall in and out of wishing and engaging in that very time.
Yeah, like I said, I'm not sure if it's specified at what point engaging bodhicitta starts. Again, probably not definite. Okay, anything in the chat box? Anything from online?
Nothing here.
Okay. Maybe you're overwhelmed. So much information and maybe some difficult concepts. But if you think of questions, between now and the next class, please feel free to send them in to the center and I'll do my best to answer them in the next class. Yeah, so I had planned to talk about the path of seeing tonight, but I'll leave that for next week because it's very interesting, but it's also, what's that?
That's okay, it just happens sometimes.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
it's from over here.
It's very loud.
Okay, good time to stop. So let's conclude by making a dedication of our merit, our positive energy, from spending this time together looking at these very precious teachings from the Ornament of Clear Realizations, and doing so with a good motivation, bodhicitta motivation, wishing to help all sentient beings. So we definitely created a lot of merit, positive energy. So let's share that with all other beings, wishing them all to be free of suffering and have happiness, and in particular, to meet the teachings so that they can embark on the path and follow the path and as quickly as possible reach enlightenment. So the prayers, dedication prayers. Due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the supreme jewel bodhicitta that has not arisen arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish, but increase more and more. Incomparably kind and supreme Tenzin Gyatso, the wish-fulfilling, wish-granting jewel, source of every benefit and happiness in this world, may you have a long life and all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. You who uphold the subduer's moral way, who serve as the bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Manjunath's victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplish magnificent prayers honoring the 3 sublime ones, Savior of myself and others, your disciples, please, please live long. Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank
much,
you.
Venerable.
Thank you,
So interesting.
Venerable.